Hey everyone, Random Randy here, and in today's tutorial I am going to be showing you how to make the Hangetsu or half moon shawl. As you saw in the clip that showed off the shawl, it is a half circle shawl and it's a relatively easy pattern, so I'm just gonna dive right into what you need to get started and let's get going. First off, you are going to obviously need yarn of some sort. In this tutorial, I'm going to be using Hirschner's Worsted 8 Halloween Shimmer. And it is a very pale green color with a silver metallic thread running through it. This is a full 8-ounce skein. You'll be needing somewhere in the realm of 150 to 250 tops, depending on how large you want to make it, grams of yarn. It all depends upon the weight of yarn that you're using, and in the written pattern there is a chart that will tell you what size hook you're going to want for that particular yarn. Essentially, you're going to want a hook size that is at least 1 to 2 millimeters larger than the recommended hook size for that yarn. If you want the shawl to have a lot of really nice drape to it, I would recommend going even larger. For the autumn colored one that was shown in the demo, I used a DK weight yarn and a J or a 6 millimeter hook. For this worsted weight yarn, I'm going to be using an L or an 8 millimeter hook. So it's going to be pretty open and loose. If you wanted to have a tighter, warmer shawl, you could use a smaller hook size, but I would recommend your hook still be at least 1 millimeter larger than the recommended size for the yarn. Other materials you will need, aside from yarn and a hook, are a pair of scissors. I prefer these teeny tiny little ones right here. They have a very small footprint as far as travel crochet goes. Going to need a darning or tapestry needle of some sort for weaving in your ends. You're going to want a row counter for when you get to the repeats. That way you know which row you're on, although honestly, once you're through the second repeat, you can usually tell by reading your work where you're at in the pattern. And you're going to need stitch markers. You are going to need 5 of them. You don't need to have these particular stitch markers. You could use a scrap bit of yarn. You could use a safety pin. You can use an old earring that has the little loops on the back. You can use pretty much anything as long as you have something to let you know where your increases are supposed to be. Because the number will change with each pattern increase exponentially, so rather than counting stitches, I find it's a lot easier to use the markers. Those are all of the materials that you need. You're going to want to make sure you have the written pattern with you as well, so be sure to grab that. Whether you have it in digital form or if you have it printed out, just make sure you've got it with you, and let's dive right into getting this shawl started. Stitches that you're going to learn in this tutorial, because I will briefly go over each of them as I'm performing them the first few times, and then I'll go through it at normal speed, are you will need to know magic ring, you will need to know what it means to yarn over, to chain, to single crochet, double crochet, to increase, or in this case, it will also be called a V-stitch. You will also learn how to do the triangle stitch. And the instructions for that are on the written pattern, but I will go over it on film as well. So here we go, row 1. We're going to be starting with a magic ring. As if you've done any of my tutorials before, I start just about everything with a magic ring. Anyway, so you're going to grab your end of your yarn, going to wrap it around a few of your fingers. I usually go for 3. You're going to cross your yarn over the loop already on your finger. I hold it with my pinky just to keep it straight. Going to stick your hook under both strands, grab the far one, and pull it through. Now you're going to chain 2. which is just yarning over, and a yarn over is just wrapping your yarn over the back of the hook. That's really all it is. Chain 2, 1, 2, and now we're going to make 6 double crochets in the center of that magic ring. So a double crochet, you yarn over your hook, put it through the center of the circle, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the center 2 loops, yarn over, and pull through the last 2 loops. Going to do 5 more of those, so once more slow, yarn over, through the center, yarn over one more time, through the center 2, yarn over, through the last 2. Now go ahead and carry on until you have 6 double crochet stitches. And that is not including your chain 2. The chain 2 for most of the pattern will not count as a stitch. Now that you have 6 double crochets in your magic ring, we are going to tug on your yarn tail of the circle to close the circle. But rather than pulling it all the way through and slipping here, as usual, to make it into a circle, we're actually going to chain 2, and we're going to turn the work. So now we're going to be working into the back of the stitches, which is going to give us that nice half circle shape as opposed to it being completely round. Now we're going to start round 2. Round 2 is very simple. You're just putting 2 double crochets into each stitch. So this is an increase round. So once you have your 12 double crochet stitches, you're going to chain 2 yet again, and we're going to turn it over. For row 3, going to be 1 double crochet into the first stitch, then we're going to put 2 double crochets into the next. We're going to be repeating those 2 stitches all the way across. So the third stitch gets 1 double crochet, the fourth gets 2. So just keep repeating that pattern of 1 double crochet, then an increase until you are at the end of the row, and then you should have 18 double crochet stitches when you are done. So now that you have your 18 double crochet stitches, as with all previous rows, we're going to chain 2 and turn the work over. If you want, you can weave in the end from your magic circle right now, but you don't really have to worry about it. It might loosen up a little bit as you work. You can adjust it back down at the end. It's not a super big deal. So now for row 4, we're going to put 1 double crochet into the first stitch, 1 double crochet into the second stitch, and 2 double crochets into the third stitch. Going to be repeating that all the way around, so the next stitch gets 1 double crochet, then 1 double crochet, and 2. So go ahead and keep repeating that until you get to the end of row 4, and you should have 24 double crochets, not counting your chain 2, once you get to the end. So now at the end of row 4, should have 24 double crochet stitches. We're going to chain 2 and turn. Row 5, 1 double crochet in the first stitch, 1 double crochet into the second stitch, 1 double crochet into the third stitch, and 2 double crochets into the fourth stitch. So we're going to be repeating that pattern of 1, 1, 1, 2 all the way to the end of the row, and when you are finished you should have 30 double crochets. Now that we have reached the end of row 5, you should have 30 double crochet stitches. And moving right along, going to chain 2 and turn. And now we're going to be starting row 6. Row 6, just like all of the other ones, 1 double crochet into the first, second, third, and fourth stitches, and your increase, which is where you do 2 stitches in the same stitch, will be in the 5th. So after that, 1 double crochet, 1 double crochet, 1, 1, and 2 into the 5th. So just keep carrying on with that repeat until you get to the end of row 6, and you should have 36 double crochet stitches at the end of this row. So now that we have reached the end of row 6, it is time to move on to row 7, and here's where you're going to want to have your stitch markers ready because we will be placing them in this round. So chain 2 and turn, and now we are going to do 1 double crochet into the first 5 stitches. And now we are going to place our V-stitches where our stitch markers are going to go and where your increases are going to be for the duration of the shawl. So you've got 1 double crochet in your first 5 stitches. Now a V-stitch is simply a double crochet, and you're going to chain 2 and put another double crochet right back into that same space. And it's going to leave a little bit of a point and a wider space there. So I'm going to put my first stitch marker there. Maybe. There we go. And that's all you really have to do to be able to keep track of where your increases are. So now we're going to do 1 double crochet into the next 5 stitches. And the 6th stitch gets another V-stitch, which again is a double crochet, chain 2, and another double crochet. Place your marker at that center point. The next 5 stitches get double crochets, and then you're going to do another V-stitch and place your marker. You're just going to keep repeating that until you get to the end, and once you're at the end of the row, you should have 42 double crochet stitches. And I like to put a really big marker in the middle just so I know that's my center point. And after you have done your last increase, you're going to do 1 double crochet into the next 5 stitches. Your very last stitch is going to have 2 double crochets in it. That's going to make sure that your increases on either side are even so that the shawl is going to curve around your neck the way that you want it to. So once you finish that and you have your 42 double crochets, we're going to be starting the first row of the pattern repeat. Everything up until now has just been building the base of the shawl, so now we're going to be getting to the fun part. At the end of row 7, make sure that you have chained 2 and turned your work before beginning row 8. As I said, row 8 is going to be the first row of the pattern repeat that you will be using to complete the rest of the shawl. So into our first stitch, we're going to do 2 double crochets. Then we're going to chain 1, skip this next stitch, and double crochet into the one following it. Again, chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet into the one following it. And as you can see, it's going to give us this nice lacy open row in the work. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and double crochet. Now, as you can see, we're right next to our first marker where that chain 2 V-stitch space is. So now we're going to chain 1, and our next stitch is going to go right here into this big space. And it will be another V-stitch right into that chain 2 space. So double crochet, chain 2, and double crochet yet again. Now you're going to want to move your marker, even though as you get farther along in the pattern, it's pretty easy to tell where it is, even if you have forgotten, but it's good to do it in the beginning just to form the habit. So next we're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, double crochet into the one following it, chain 1, skip, double crochet, chain 1, skip, double crochet, and that's going to put us right at the edge of the next V-stitch. So just as before, chain 1 and perform another V-stitch right into that chain 2 space. You're going to keep repeating that until you get to your last increase, and then I'll meet you back there to finish up the row. So now that you have finished your last V-stitch increase for the row, going to chain 1, skip, double crochet into the next, chain 1, skip, double crochet into the next space, chain 1, skip this stitch, and we're going to do 2 double crochets into the last stitch. And we're going to chain 2 and turn. And I'm gonna mark my row. As you can see, we've just finished off row 8. Moving on to row 9, we're just going to be filling in the spaces that we've created. So the first stitch is going to get 2 double crochets. The second stitch right here is going to get 1 double crochet, and this chain 1 space, you're just going to put a double crochet right through there. So every double crochet that's not in the V-stitch gets a double crochet. Every chain 1 space also gets a double crochet. So the next DC gets 1 as well, and in the chain 1 space. 1 on top of the double crochet, and 1 in the chain 1 space just before the increase. Now, unlike the last row, we're also going to be working a double crochet on top of the edges of our V-stitch. So make sure you put a double crochet in each of those, and then do your increase in that center chain 2 space, which is a double crochet, a chain 2, and another double crochet. Following that, make sure you're putting a double crochet on top of that other edge of the V-stitch. Place your marker back where it should be, before you totally lose where it goes. Like when I was doing my sample initially, and my first few rows are kind of wonky, but it'll block out, so it's totally fine, right? Right. So moving on from there, you're just going to keep filling in all the spaces as you go, ensuring that when you get to each increase, you do work a double crochet into the top of each edge of the V. So now that we have reached the next chain 2 center of the V-stitch, we're going to do another V-stitch right into it. Double crochet, chain 2, double crochet. Again, making sure to double crochet into the last edge of that V-stitch. Move your marker. And go ahead and carry on like that until you reach the last stitch of the row, and I will meet you back there. So now that you have reached the last stitch of your row, you're just going to be doing 2 double crochets into that last space. Now chain 2 and turn your work. And we are ready to begin round 10. Now we are ready to begin round 10. Round 10, just as before, we're going to put 2 double crochets into the first stitch. And now you're going to just put 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way to your increase, where you're going to perform another V stitch. You're going to do that all the way to the end of the row. And your very last stitch, just as before, is going to have 2 double crochets. So go ahead and finish up this row, and I will meet you for row 11, which is where we're going to do our first row with the triangle stitch. Alright, now that you have finished off row 10, we're ready to start row 11, where we are going to learn the triangle stitch. So into the first stitch of the round, as in most of the previous ones, we're going to do 2 double crochets. And now, in the second stitch, we're going to start the triangle stitch. Triangle stitch is kind of like doing a decrease across 3 stitches. So we're going to start it just like a double crochet. You're going to yarn over, go into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, so there's 3. You're going to yarn over again, go into the second stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, so now you've got 5 stitches on the hook. You're going to yarn over one more time, go through the third stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. So now you should have 7 loops on your hook. Going to yarn over and pull through all 3 of those stitches. Now you're going to chain 2. And that is your very first triangle stitch. So now, to do your second triangle stitch, since you've done your chain 2, you're going to be putting the first portion into the same space as the last leg of your triangle. So yarn over, go right into that same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over again, go into the second stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, so you now have 5 on your hook. Yarn over, go through the third stitch, yarn over one more time. Now you should have 7 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through all of them. chain 2, and carry on to the next one. I'm gonna stick with you until we get through the increase, because the way the stitching works out for the increases can seem a little weird sometimes, so just keep going. Done our chain 2, so into the next space, into the same space as your last one, then yarn over into the second space, yarn over, pull it through, so there's 5, yarn over into the third, yarn over and through all 7, chain 2, go right back into that same space, through the second, through the third, yarn over and pull through all 7 loops, chain 2. There's a little fuzzy bit I'll have to trim off. Woohoo! That's what it's looking like so far. Right, now this is the one where it's going to seem kind of weird. So we're going to go back through that same leg of the last one, into the second stitch, and now instead of going into the top of this next double crochet, we're actually going to put the last leg of this triangle right into the chain 2 space of the V-stitch. And we're going to pull it through all 7, chain 2 yet again, and we're going to start the next triangle stitch in that same V space. So yarn over, pull up your loop through that chain 2 space, yarn over. Now we're going to go into this double crochet. So now you've got 5 on the hook, yarn over through that second double crochet after the chain 2 space. So now you've got your 7, just pull through all of them. And this is where you need to make sure you're putting your markers in, because when I made my initial one, this is where I messed it up a little bit. So it's kind of weird. So that. And as you're doing your later rows, you'll find that sometimes your stitches won't be completely the exact right number. And when you're doing the triangle stitch rows, it is okay to fudge a stitch here and there to make sure that you're placing the end and beginning of a triangle stitch into your increase spaces. And as you can see, once you get more used to it, it gets a lot quicker. You don't even really have to think about it. It has a very nice textured effect. And I like that as you get along in the pattern, because of the way the row count is numbered, you will have one portion. You'll have one portion where you're going to be looking at the front side of the triangle stitches, and you'll have another portion where you'll be looking at the back, which is it's raised up much more. It gives it a really nice texture that I actually enjoy as you're going along. So just keep working your triangles until you get to the next V space. Now see, this is what I was talking about with your numbers getting weird. So as you can see, we're almost to this space, but we're not quite there yet. And we've got our 7 already, so we're going to finish off this one. Chain 2. And now we're going to start here, right back in the same spot where we finished off the last one. We're going to start this one. And now, even though in the last one we skipped this double crochet and went right into the middle of the V, we're going to actually go into this double crochet space and yarn over so that the end of this triangle, so see now we have our 7 loops, is going to be in that center chain 2 space of the V stitch. That can seem kind of confusing at first, but after you've done it a few times, it will get easier. So pretty much alternating every other V-stitch, you're gonna have to do one or the other to get it so that you've got the start and end of a triangle stitch in your increase stitch. So just to show you what I mean, work to this center one, and I'll show you one more time, and then you can go ahead and finish off the row. Alright, so here, yet again, we're at the one that's just before here, just before our increase. So we're going to yarn over, go into that same stitch as the last leg of our previous triangle stitch. We're going to go into the top of that double crochet of the V, and then we're going to do the last leg of it right into the center chain 2. Maybe. There we go. And we're going to finish it off with the next one, right through that first double crochet at the edge, and go through the second double crochet after the chain 2 space. And there you have it. Just make sure you keep moving your marker and get yourself to the end of the row. As I said, just making sure that however you have to fudge it, as long as you're getting the end of a triangle stitch and the beginning of the next one into your increase space, the math is all going to work out at the end, even if it seems funky right now. So go ahead and finish up row 10, and then we'll move on to row 11. I am now at the end of row 11, and you should be too. So as you'll see, there are 3 spaces left here. So we're going to do the last triangle stitch. I'm going to chain 2. And then the space in between this chain 2 and the first double crochet, we're going to put 2 double crochets into that space. And there you go. That is going to finish off row 11. So now we're going to chain 2 and move on to row 12. Chain 2 and turn. Row 12, you're going to be filling in all of the spaces that you made, essentially, from the triangle stitches. So this first stitch is going to get 2 double crochets. Then you're going to put 1 double crochet on top of this second double crochet. Going to put a double crochet into the space. And then in each of the chain 2 spaces until you get to your increase markers, you're just going to put 2 double crochets to fill in the space. Alright, so now we are down to our first increase marker, and in this space we're going to do a V-stitch as in most of the other rows before it. So we're going to do a double crochet, chain 2, and a double crochet right back into that same space. Make sure you're moving your marker. And that's what you're going to do for the whole rest of this row. 2 double crochets in each chain 2 space, a V-stitch in each one of your increase spaces. So go ahead and finish this row up until the end, and I will meet you back there. Now we are nearing the end of row 12. As you can see, I've got my last chain 2 space here that we're going to put 2 double crochets into. So now you should have 2 double crochets left. We're going to put 1 double crochet on top of the first and 2 double crochets into the last one. Then you're going to chain 2 and turn. And this next portion is going to be super easy because you've done it already. Row 13 is simply a repeat of row 11, and then row 14 is a repeat of row 12. So now that you are done with row 14, you are just going to repeat rows 8 through 14 as many times as you need until the shawl is the size that you want it to be. Depending upon the weight of your yarn, you're looking at anywhere between 3 and potentially 5, maybe 6 repeats. For DK weight yarn with a J-hook, I did 4 and it ended up going just below my elbows, which is perfect. With worsted weight, I'm guessing 3 might be enough because this is looking pretty huge so far. So now I'm going to show you the edging that I used, which is an open shell stitch edging, which I think complements the triangle stitches quite well. So once you've finished off your last instance of row 14, you're ready to do your edging. And you've done your chain 2 to start it off, which is what you're going to need. So we're going to do a double crochet into this first stitch. And in this very first shell, this chain 2 is going to count as a stitch, but you're not going to have it anywhere else in the row, so it doesn't really amount to much. Then you're going to chain 2. Maybe I can chain 2. And you're going to do 2 more double crochets right into the same stitch. So each of the spaces that has a shell stitch in it is going to have 2 double crochet, 2 chain 2, 2 double crochets. Now we're going to skip the next stitch and we're going to do a single crochet into the second. That's really going to separate your shell stitches and make them pop. Now we're going to skip a stitch and into the next stitch I'm going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 more double crochets right into that same space. Now, as you can see, it has quite a pronounced point to it, which I really like quite a bit. Again, skip the next, single crochet into the one after that, skip the next, and do your shell stitch into the one following the skipped space. And here, once you get to your increased space, rather than putting a single crochet, which you would normally do, we're going to actually do 2 shell stitches into this space. So we're going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets again, and then we're going to chain 3, and do another shell stitch. So 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 more double crochets. And as you can see, with it stretched out here, this is what the 2 shells in the increased stitch will look like. It's going to have this more open space in the middle and the 2 points here, and you're just going to keep continuing in that manner all the way along until you get to the end of your row. And that's really it. Then you're going to cut your yarn, and once you have woven in your yarn, your Hangetsu shawl will be complete. If any part of this tutorial was unclear, feel free to leave some comments down below the video and I will help you out as best that I can. I hope that this tutorial was helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing all of your projects. If you are on Instagram or Twitter, feel free to post your pictures and tag me with the hashtag Hangetsu Shawl RR so that I can see all of your beautiful creations. And I wanted to thank you all so much for watching this video and supporting small yarn creators. And I hope that you enjoy your beautiful new shawl, whether it is for you, a gift, or to sell. You can sell finished products made from this pattern. Please do not duplicate or replicate this pattern in whole or part, claiming it as your own. And on that note, again, thank you so much for watching, everybody, and happy hooking. Bye.